So today I'm going to take the time and shoot some video of the buggy, where I'm at on the progress, show you the Baja and some other projects. The mock-up, I've had my shocks. They're FOA shocks, but the hold-up was I needed to get my CV joints, which I was able to buy now. That way I can go through the motion and see where they bind, so I know how much travel I have in the rear end, so I can mock up the mount for those. I'll go over some of the lights I bought. These are my lights for the top of the buggy. I went with these are 5-inch. I went with this brand, Big Lion. They got good reviews on Amazon. I wanted a matching set, but I wanted a clear and an amber. And these are both 5-inch, so this is what I went with to try on the buggy. For the Baja, I'm going to use a different light, but these look like good lights, so I wanted to give them a try. Got a night light, or night light, on the back. This is, I believe it's a 17 or 18-inch bar. This is going to be my reverse light in the back. This is probably the brand that I'll use on the Baja. Again, came from Amazon. These are empty. I've got turn signals and brake lights. These came from Apple Tree, I believe, is where those came from. These also came from Amazon. I think they're trucker lights. Kind of like them, but I don't know if I'm going to use them. They're relatively inexpensive, but they have brake, park, and a reverse light, so I may or may not use them. And then here's a 25-inch chase light, which has brake, turn signals, and I think like a hazard. There's no reverse light here. You have to bump up to the 30-inch, I think, for that one. This is like a little dome light that I'll have in the bar. These are some tabs I bought from Moto Built. Basically, you weld these to your frame wherever you have wiring. You weld it to the frame, and you can run your wiring across, and you can run a zip tie across it. Holds all your wiring, so they're pretty convenient. They're cheap. Again, they're from Moto Built. Okay, I'm still in the process of mocking up the front end. One of the changes I'm going to make here on my steering rod, with this that goes into a beveled kingpin, it's so you can run a 5/8 Hams. The problem with this setup is the clearance. If it goes up, it hits before I run out of shock travel. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull this out. I'm going to drill that out and move it to the bottom, under the underside, and that'll give me full travel when it goes up, so it won't hit the frame. So it'll allow it to go all the way up. So that's one of the things I have to change soon. This is a mock-up out of a cardboard, but it's going to be aluminum when it's done. And basically what it's going to do, there's going to be a channel that goes underneath of it, and that'll be a stripe and the number for the buggy, but it'll let all my wiring for the front end to run underneath of it, so to kind of be hidden. All right, here's my pedal assembly. Here I have an adjustable dead pedal for my foot when I'm driving, which I haven't seen a lot of buggies with those, but I went ahead and put one in to make it more comfortable to drive. My seats are going to be in a fixed location, so they won't move, so I wanted my pedal assemblies to be able to move in case someone else drives the car. But basically you have 3 inches of travel. It's got threaded bolts in here, so you can move this 3 inches forward or back on that. Here I made a heel plate for your foot, so when you work the gas and brake pedal, it's a lot easier. Your heel, your foot just rests along that, and it makes it a lot easier to drive. So it's a nice little feature. And then this is just to give me access to get out of it. When I get out, to keep my feet from sliding across the floor. This is kind of angled a little bit. And I'll put some grip tape on it when it's done, but basically you just put your feet on there to get out, and you can just push yourself out without sliding across it. This is a gauge pod I made. It took me about 3 weeks to weld it up, get it made, but it came out pretty nice. I basically wanted everything kind of at my fingertips. So I've got all my switches, I've got the engine start, the horn, the battery kill, those are the headlights, and then of course the key. Speedometer, got my roof lights, fog lights, rear lights, whip, winch, headlights, and turn signals. And then my steering brake, shifter, and I went ahead and I put an emergency brake in here. I'll show you that in a minute. I had to make the emergency brake so it would work around the shifter, so it has a little kind of tunnel in it, but the brake works fine, and the shifter works, goes through all the gears. I made my grab bar here out of a little scooter. I went to like a thrift shop and I found a kid's scooter, so basically that was the gooseneck. So it was kind of a cheap way to get a grab bar in it. There's my other gauge pod there that has my oil pressure, fuel gauge, and the accessory for power. This is a whip light. It's a 3-foot whip light I got. They say they're flexible, but it's really not flexible at all. So I ordered a spring to replace the base for it. So when I go through the garage door, it can lay over and not be a problem. But they're really not that flexible. Okay, for the gas tank, I got a spun aluminum. I've got a 10-inch by 32-inch, and I got one with a sending unit built into it, so I can run the gas gauge. Because in my old buggy, I didn't have a sending unit. It's always a pain in the ass to have to stick a stick in there or look in there. It's a pain, so it's worth the extra money. I think just to go ahead and get one with that built into it, so you can just treat it like a normal car. I'm running 3x3 arms on the back, and if you look closely, I got emergency brake, disc brake, so I had to drill a hole through the mount there so I have access for the caliper to work the emergency brake, so that just goes through, comes out the front side. A little better view of the arms that I have. I'm just running a 3-rib transmission. It's this mock-up right now. I'm going to have to tear it apart and rebuild it. And I have a 1776 motor. Again, it's just a mock-up motor. It'll be torn apart and redone. It runs now, but I'm going to tear it down and completely go through it. And I got dual carbs to put on it as well. Okay, that's a buggy progress for now. So in the weeks to come, I'm going to drill out my spindles, get the front end completely mocked up, and I'm going to start putting I'll put my CV joints in just to test them, to find out where they bind so I know the motion of the rear wheels. Then I'll start fabricating the mounts for my rear shocks. So that's the next major thing. After that, I need to mount the seats, mount all of my lights, start putting the little gussets for the wiring, and that's about it. Then it'll be ready to get it together, tear it apart, strip it apart, and paint it. The blue that you see is the color that it's going to be. It's a gray frame now, but those blue highlights are the color that it's going to be when it's done. All right, here's the Baja. I'm not even going to dust it off. It's been sitting here collecting dust. I'm saving money for the transmission so I can get that, so I can go through the same process. I'll get the axles, and I'll know how much travel I have in the rear suspension, so I'll know where to build my roll cage and where to mount the shocks and that. So just to show you, we got the seats. Instead of sending like $1,000 for seats, buying a $500 seat and then a $500 seat, I bought one $700 seat from PRP, which I drive in. It's 2 inches wider, so it's a nice seat. And then I just bought a $200 cheap seat for the passenger because they're the passenger. So I spent the money on myself. This is the gas tank. It's going to be mounted kind of down here, but I do have the gas tank now. Got the dash mounted in there, the steering wheel, steering column. Got the front suspension. I got the suspension, most of the suspension from Nichols Fabrication. It's kind of a kit. You get some of the stuff, but there's a lot of things you still have to do yourself. So it's basically on there, it's tacked in, but it'll get tied into the cage. Once the cage goes in there, there'll be lots of bars to the front end, so the front end's just kind of mocked up right now. And it should have about 17 to 19 inches of travel when it's done. And a better view of the inside. And I made a dead pedal down here for my foot. The gas pedal, clutch, and brake, I have a lot of room. It's nice and wide down there. For my feet, that's one problem. If you ever had a Volkswagen, they're extremely narrow inside. They're really kind of hard to drive with your feet accessing the brakes. And for the dead pedal, that's what this bubble is out here. Basically, that's room for my feet. These Nerf bars, the way they're made, they're 1-inch, 1/8-inch wall tubing, but everywhere they go through, if you look close, it's plated right here. So you have an 1/8-inch plate that goes around, and then there's a plate kind of on the inside too, and there's a solid tube that connects it all the way through, and that hole is so I can mount it to the frame once it's inside. So basically, any hit here will directly go through. It'll transfer basically into the roll cage, so it's not really tied to the heater channel. They just kind of go through those. Same thing here. It's a little easier to see. You can kind of see the plate, the 1/8-inch plate that goes around, and this plate here. So it's all plated, and again, there's a solid tube all the way through to the outside. So it's basically a solid mount. So the roll cage will be in here somewhere, wherever it's at. However I make it, this one mocked up bar, it'll get tied into it, so it'll be nice and secure. The rear suspension on this, I have 5x5, so they're 5 over, 5 wide. And these units are from Pacific Customs in California. So these are kind of their top of the line rear suspension arms. But I'm looking forward to this winter once I get the transmission I'll get the buggy, hopefully I'll get the buggy close to being finished, and I can start working back on the Baja, get the cage in it, and get it rolling. Okay, what could future projects be? Well, we have a 49 Oldsmobile right here. This is all the tubing right here for the roll cage for the Baja. Well, this is a 71 Carmen Ghia that's been being converted into sort of like a Porsche. The things that's already happened to it, the doors have been shortened. And you can see, so they're only go halfway down. And if I can find the latch. It's suicide doors now. It has a Porsche Speedster windshield on it. That's for the same kind of gas cap that's going to be on the Alpha, and also over an Oldsmobile. I'll show you. But that's a hood. This has been, the hood's kind of, if you know Ferrari 250 GTO, the rear of it kind of has, the trunk kind of has this shape around the gas cap. I just moved that to the front of this car. The Oldsmobile. So the gas cap goes on that. It has an aluminum wing on it. Everything's pop riveted on this. And it's got some aircraft lights. My World War II airplane. The goal in this car, when I was working on it, I kind of wanted to look like an old race car in the 50s, and I wanted to use processes that were done in the 50s. So there's not a lot of welding on this car. It's a lot of rivets and aluminum, things that could have been done in the 50s relatively easy. And that's just kind of mocked up, but that's actually a 1969 Camaro bumper that I just had laying around, but it actually fits pretty good, so may or may not keep it. I don't know. Over here we have more of a traditional hot rod. It's a 29 Ford Roadster. This one's being mocked up. So this one's pretty traditional. There's that. There's the gas cap over here. 40 Ford steering wheel. It looks like it's a stick car, but this actually, you see, the 3-speed, but it's automatic transmission. And what would be the clutch pedal is actually the high beam switch. So it only looks like a standard, but it's actually automatic. And some of the little details. The motor mounts look like they're riveted on from the factory. So there's lots of little detail on this. And that's a Corvette motor from a friend of mine. It was his grandfather's. I made the headers from a Speedway kit that comes together, and you have to weld it yourself. So, yet another project I have to work on. This was one of the first roadsters that I started working on. This is a 29, but it wasn't a true roadster. But it has a Vortex V6 in it. It's got one of those old half rack and pinions on it. It has a dash from a 54 Ford, I believe. Or 53, I think it's 53, 54. It's been sectioned and cut, and it'll wrap around. Has seats out of a Porsche Boxster. I forget what wheels they were, but anyway, this is yet another project. Upcoming projects, we have too many. All right, I'd like to take this time to thank you guys for subscribing. Everyone who's subscribed enjoys the videos. My goal was to keep them coming weekly now. See how that goes. I have the editing process down, I think, so that's going to be the goal. We'll see what happens. Again, thanks for watching. In the near future, as you saw with the grease car, I have another project like that coming up. These are types of things that give me money to build in these projects. I'll be doing the Winnie the Pooh. It's a ballet, so I have set pieces for that. So I'm going to go ahead and make a video of some of the set pieces, because when I watch YouTube, I always wonder what these people do for a living and things like that, and how they can afford to do these projects. So I want to show that kind of stuff as I do it. So we'll get some Winnie the Pooh stuff coming up soon. And then we'll be back on the cars. We'll be on the Buggy. Will be the primary thing. I'm going to try to get the Buggy finished. So that's going to be the main thing I'm going to work on, is the Buggy. Then go into the Baja after that. So those will be the two projects. Even though we looked at a bunch of other projects I have, the Buggy is going to be project number 1. The Baja will be project number 2. So see you soon. See you in the future. Thanks.